Alright, so what we're going to be talking about in this video today is we're going to be talking about the Quebec independence movement. You've already done a few assignments on the history of Canada, and we've talked about the geography and and touched on the government in Canada. But specifically today we're going to be talking about Quebec. We know that Quebec is very different and that culturally there's a lot of big differences. And that they mainly speak French, but they also, at one particular point in time, and even today to some extent, they also would like to possibly, some people in Quebec would like to gain their independence from Canada. And so we're going to talk about that for just a little bit today. So here's the essential question. What is the Quebec independence movement and how has it affected Canada? And it continues to really affect Canada today, but we're going to take a few steps back and talk about how exactly that has came to be. So after independence, Canada received its independence or its own sovereignty in 1931, which is relatively recent, not that long ago. And Canada still had close ties to England, to the British Commonwealth, and even today they still culturally or historically have ties to more ties to England. But this caused a lot of problems. Many of the French in Canada felt like England had too much influence. So the big thing to remember here is that Canada was not only founded at one point in time by the English, it was also founded by the French as well, specifically in the region where Quebec is today. So there's this strong cultural tie to England, and a lot of folks in Quebec in Canada really don't like it all that much. And so there's this rivalry that starts to develop, and French Canadians live mostly in Quebec. Since gaining independence, again in 1931, since gaining independence, French Canadians and English Canadians have fought over land and resources, and this is just in particular one specific issue that divides them. Many French Canadians, they have felt like second-class citizens. They feel like they're outnumbered, which they are, very outnumbered, and they don't have their voices heard. And so this issue after issue, year after year, it's not just one thing in particular that has caused them to feel this way. It's really a cumulative effect. There's a lot of things over the history of their country, and especially since independence in 1931, that's caused a lot of French Canadians to feel excluded culturally, linguistically, historically, felt that they have been excluded in some ways in Canada. Here's one example, and this is during World War I, and you can see this picture. These are a few different soldiers in World War I. But during World War I, England and France were fighting Germany, and Canada came in and helped England. They sent raw materials, they sent soldiers, and literally thousands of Canadians died in their cause in helping England, which was obviously something that they were really pushing for, more so than helping France, even though they may have been fighting against the same cause. So this is just one example, really, how World War I started to be kind of something that divided French Canadians and English Canadians, and specifically what country they were helping. So French Canadians in World War I, a lot of French Canadians disagreed with Canada fighting in World War I. They thought that fighting in World War I would only help Canada, or would only help England and hurt Canada. And they felt like that this was, again, one of those things that a lot of the English Canadians were pushing for, because historically they had strong ties with England, and the French Canadians really felt like that it wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't something that Canada was going to benefit from. They felt like that the only reason they were fighting in World War I was because that some in Canada wanted to help England. They didn't like the close ties that Canada still had with England. Canada fought, though, in World War I anyways, and many French Canadians felt that the rest of Canada really didn't care about their opinions. They kind of felt excluded. They felt like it didn't really matter to the rest of Canada how they felt and the stance that they had taken against Canada being involved in World War I. Well, then there's a change in Quebec. Quebec used to be a French colony, and this is extremely important to remember when we talk about Quebec and how different Quebec is than the other provinces that are in Canada. After independence and for the next 100 years, many English-speaking people began moving into Quebec. And so beforehand, the only people that you really have in Quebec are French people. But then afterwards, over a period of time, a lot of English people are going to start to move in to Quebec as well. So the French people of Quebec, they were afraid of losing their culture, and this is really what it all boils down to. They felt like they were being infiltrated by the foreigners almost. They were afraid that their language and culture might disappear, that instead of there being a focus on French culture and on French language, that it would start to mainly focus on the English. And they were already outnumbered by English Canadians as is. So they felt like this was almost kind of an invasion. Even though they're the same country, they're all a part of the country of Canada. They felt like that this was kind of a cultural invasion of other Canadians that would push their English culture on French Quebec. So what develops is what's called French nationalism. Many in Quebec became French nationalists, and this is kind of a little emblem that goes along with this concept. They no longer thought of themselves simply as Canadians. They didn't see themselves as, maybe not as unified as they might have thought so beforehand, but then they saw themselves as French Canadians. And this is really important that they add that little phrase, French Canadians, to how they identified with themselves. They wanted to protect their language and their culture. They wanted to be somewhat separated from the rest of Canada, at least culturally. And then even there were some that pushed it so far, many started to think that Quebec should simply succeed from Canada. And what that means is, you might not have ever heard that word before, but succeed means to break off and become their own country. Just like in the South, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, all those other states in the South, they wanted to succeed in the American Civil War and establish their own country as well. And that's what we fought an entire Civil War on. So that's the same concept. This is when the French Canadians started to push for themselves. They started to push for succession. So here's Quebec's independence movement. You can kind of see this crazy guy over here in the picture. He's got this little symbol right here is a French symbol. It's called the fleur de lis, and it's definitely something that is a cultural representation of their French heritage. But the movement spread slowly, but more and more in Quebec, people began following the movement. And specifically in 1980 and 1995, Quebec voted on whether or not to succeed. So the people of Canada voted on it. Each time, more people voted to stay a part of Canada, however. The second vote was very close. And this is kind of pretty important to see here. The second vote was pretty close. You got 49.4% of people wanted to succeed. And then 50.6% of people wanted to stay. So basically, you're looking at half and half of whether or not people wanted to stay or whether or not people wanted to succeed. So this clearly, the second vote in 1995, this was a clear divisive issue with Canadians. But the Canadian government has made it a point to give Canadians equality. And so this is something that probably started to ease a lot of tensions in Canada with Quebec. So with Quebec's independence, even though Quebec did not succeed, they did not succeed from Canada, they still have achieved equality with British Canada. And they've kept their language, they've kept their culture. French is one of the official languages of Canada, and they really try to implement this all over Quebec, specifically with, stuff like stop signs. We may not think of it all that much, but you can see here So it's like a self-service, maybe a gas station or something like that. You've got French on one side and you've got English on the other. And they made this a point. They made this a point specifically to make sure that French Canadians feel included. Now, does that mean that French Canadians don't speak English and they need to see French words here, there, and everywhere in order to understand? Not really. A lot of them speak English and French. But just the given fact that, say, a stop sign is going to have French and it's going to have English on it, that helps to make French Canadians more included in everything that goes on in society and in civilization. So here's what I want you to do right now. You got a copy of this sheet right here, and I want y'all to take just a couple of minutes. Substitute teacher can pause the video here, and I want y'all to take a few minutes and to fill out this chart and to answer these questions. Answer as many questions as you possibly can. You can go ahead and pause the video, and then here in just a minute I will show you the answers. Okay, so here's the answers to the video or to the questions, and just a couple of things. This is kind of some review of what this slideshow was talking about specifically, but the British versus the French. Why were many French people not happy with being in the British Commonwealth? They felt like they were second-class citizens. England had too much influence, and they were definitely outnumbered. Did Quebec gain its independence? You know, you could put no or yes, but they politically never gained their independence, but they did push through and at least get some cultural independence, and they still speak French as an official language, and that's important to a lot of people in Canada. What province do most French Canadians live in? They live in Quebec. So I'm just kind of going over a few of these questions. What years did they vote? 1980, 1995. All of these facts are really important things that you need to have. And if you need to pause the video, you can go ahead and do that now. Okay. For the good portion of the rest of class, what I'd like you to do is to complete an activity, and this is real simple. You're going to make two different lists. You can do this as a thinking map if you wanted to, or you can just write lists out to the side. Why do you think Quebec is still a part of Canada? This is the question that you're answering, essentially. And you're going to make two lists that could support this question. Your first list right here is going to be, why should Quebec be its own country? So you're going to take on the idea, you're going to push for the idea, and you're going to list three reasons, list at least three reasons. Why do you think Quebec should be its own country? What are some things about Quebec that make it different? What are some things that, I mean, are there too many differences to where they shouldn't be a part of their own country? And list some of those differences. You're going to make that list. You're going to have at least three reasons of why Quebec should be its own country. And then your second list over here, why should Quebec stay a part of Canada? And list three reasons for that as well. Again, this is a really divisive issue. And Canadians in 1995, when they voted on this, I mean, it was literally split 50-50 as far as whether or not they should be their own country or be a part of Canada. So there are some reasons. I want you to kind of think through those and spend a few minutes on those. There are some reasons why Quebec should stay a part of Canada. What does it benefit them culturally? Does it benefit them politically or economically? All right, so think through and write down at least three reasons of what you think with that. This should take you a good portion of the rest of class. Once you're done answering these three questions, what I want you to do is I want you to discuss. And you can discuss this with a partner and discuss it together as a class. But I want y'all to have a class discussion. How would life be different if the state of Georgia gained independence from the United States and became its own country? How would life be different? What reasons might Georgia have for wanting to leave? Is there anything that Georgia would benefit from? What would be the benefits of having our own country? We'd get our own money supply. We could have our own military. Would that be a good thing? We would have more we'd have more say-so in how things are ran in our state, in our country, if we were our own country. So how would life be different if the state of Georgia gained independence from the United States? I want you to answer that question, kind of discuss it together as a class. Hope to see y'all soon, later on this week. Thank you.